I just got off a call with one of our district partners, a math coordinator, a math coach, a person in leadership position towards math programming, and they had, I think, just realized something that I think we all need to think about and take a step back, because sometimes we get our priorities backwards. And I think, this leader had recognized that their next level up, their leadership team at the senior level had a little bit of priorities backwards. And I want to kind of address this issue about how do we think about our priorities. And we'll go back to the framework that we have, say, used and talked about before inside the Make Math Moments District Improvement Program. But it reminded me, like when he said the backwards priority, it reminded me of, this almost like this feeling you get, and a feeling I had when I took a trip to Italy. So our family took a trip to Italy just last month, and we went there for a wedding. And while we were there, it just felt different, and it felt different in a few different ways. And one in particular, it felt different. Obviously the culture is different than here in North America. The food culture is different in North America. There's a lot of tourists, but what felt different was almost like this work-life balance, and it felt like Europeans put a different priority on work than we do here in North America. And I heard about this, through other means, but I felt like I needed to try it out, which is basically saying, like, I asked a couple that we were on a tour with about, what did they do? And I've heard that when you ask that to Europeans, sometimes they'll say what their job is, because that's what we will say here in North America. But sometimes you'll find a European who says they don't think about their work as the answer to the what do you do. So I asked this couple, and the gentleman had replied. He said, I said, well, what do you do? And he's like, well, I like to cook. I like to kind of go cycling. I do a lot of cycling. We like to go on vacation. And so to me, that was like this priority shift. Like clearly he was prioritizing his leisure life, his life outside of work. When we here in North America, if we say, what do you do? We'll say, I'm a teacher. I'm a consultant. I'm a coordinator. Somebody might say, I'm a lawyer. I'm a doctor. And we prioritize that. We think primarily first. That's what we do. Our identities are wrapped up in that. And for me, sometimes when I hear that, I feel like sometimes we here in North America have our priorities backwards. Are we working to live, or are we living to work? And it feels like sometimes we are living to work here in North America. And why I thought about that after this particular call with this district coordinator for mathematics is that he was discussing this idea that every time they talk about what they're doing in mathematics, it always comes up to be resources, structures, routines, the leaves of the tree first, and instead of the actual goals or the outcomes that we're intending, the outcomes that we're after. And that's why I thought about that kind of work-life balance in Europe versus North America, because when we say like, hey, what are you doing right now in math? Oh, we're using the Desmos curriculum. Oh, we're using 3-act math tasks. We're teaching through problem-based lessons. We're using a number talk. We're using this particular curriculum and this particular resource. Like they're putting the emphasis on the tool instead of the actual outcome. And that's the reverse. That's the priority shift that we need to actually make. We continually think about the things instead of the actual goals that we need to make. And when we make that shift, towards the goals, then the tools will eventually kind of come into play. And sometimes a tool doesn't make sense, but we're putting that priority on those tools. Like, for example, this is the structure here where people are saying it's resources. That helps maybe if we think about our resources. How are we going to use our resources to get, student engagement, student outcomes, change our test scores? Then we kind of go, okay, well, let's use those resources. How are we going to use those resources? Let's figure out some goals, and that will dictate, the outcomes that we're looking for. But that's the backwards priority. We need to think first about our student outcomes. We need to think about our vision for mathematics. It starts with the vision. It becomes the filter for every decision you make, whether it's the resource, whether it's the tool, whether it's the structure, whether it's the PD design. Everything comes down to going, what do we want our students to experience? What do we want those outcomes to be? And then that dictates the direction, the goals. And then once we kind of go, those are the outcomes we're looking for. These are the way, these are the things we want to achieve by the end of the year, by the end of the 3-year goal, by the end of the 5-year goal. That then, only then does that dictate, what our resources are doing to support those goals that then support those outcomes. What structure should we put into place to do that? And I know that this leader who I was talking to, and if he's watching this right now, he was shaking his head. He was very concerned that the priorities were backwards, and it's continually discussed about the outcome or the structures, the resources, because that's what costs a lot of money, right? Like we pay for those things at the district level, and we want to put them to use, but we do need to create those outcomes first. Create your vision, create your goals, create your key results first. And, he's shaking his head because he's been trying, to do that with that next level up. And even though he knows the priority level he needs to make, and he's going to go out there and continue to make that priority level at the coaching level, at the classroom level, for teachers to understand. So, there's this duality or this kind of trade-off that we have to continually think about. And when we get clear on those goals, that's when it becomes easier to decide, should we pick this curriculum? Because the outcomes help dictate it. The goals help dictate it. Should we use this resource? Maybe we shouldn't be using these resources. They become the filter for everything you do. It brings us back to this framework that we've been talking about here in the Make Math Moments District Improvement Program, which was adapted from everything you need for mathematics coaching from Maggie Magatha and Jenny Bay Williams. But this framework is very, it's very similar. It says, like, what are the student mathematical practices that we are after? That will help dictate what shifts in classroom practice we want. That helps also dictate, this is where our addition came in. That also should help dictate what mathematical proficiencies we want to strengthen with our students, but also with our teachers. How do we get them prepared to do the shifts in the classroom practice, the instructional strategies? That can help set what focus zones, the objectives that we're working with. And then once we know those, it's supporting those two initiatives on the practice and the proficiency, which then go ahead and support the student outcomes in our classroom. Like, these are the models that we should be following when making decisions, when talking about our program. It's a mindset shift. We have to think, kind of like say, I'm going to shift to talk about, what are we doing? We're not living to work. We're working to live. We are thinking about what outcomes we're after. We're after discourse in our mathematical classrooms. We're after reasoning. We're after proving. We're after conceptual understanding. We're after procedural fluency. We're after the proficiencies, the standards, the practice standards. Those are the things that we're really wanting in our classrooms. We got to start shifting our language to saying that's what we're doing, and these are the tools and the strategies that help us get there. So you're going to take a look right now at your program. What are you doing? Are you using that type of language? Are you thinking about your program in that way? And start making those subtle shifts. And if you're not actually sure, when you do get clear on what, those outcomes are and are not sure exactly what to do about it, reach out to us. That's what we do every single day. We talk with leaders like you every single day. On their district level mathematics program, their school level mathematics program, and guide them on best practices and best pathways, starting with that vision. You can reach out to us at makemathmoments.com/discovery. That's makemathmoments.com/discovery.